Yo, what's up guys, it's your boy Sami here. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto was a blind ninja? Semi-dark powerful Naruto, part 1. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, please subscribe to our channel, and like this video. I do not own this fanfic, and also make sure to check out the author of this fanfic, Snipa, and support him for writing this awesome fanfic. Link is in the description. So let's get into the video. The sense of seeing. Located in your eyes. It takes up 85% of our concentration at any given time, unless our eyes are closed. This sense has the shortest individual memory span, only a split second. Our sense of sight is both a blessing and a curse. A blessing because it allows us to see the world around us, and let us communicate with everything non-verbally. It is a curse because humans rely on this sense of sight more than any other, despite the fact that the brain fools itself with what it sees. Remember this, one may be able to see something, but they might not be able to perceive it, to understand it. Naruto stared the man in front of him down with a large scowl across his face. They were smirking back at him, silently laughing up a storm in his mind. The 7-year-old Naruto, wearing bright orange clothes and a pair of sunglasses, turned away from the man and slowly walked down the street away from the Hokage tower. His sun-kissed spiky blonde hair bounced with each slow step. His bare feet, rough from hot and bumpy streets, seemed to get heavier with each stride. It wasn't fair. Flashback. Cornered. Had to escape. They are coming. The orphan quickly spun on his foot to look at a dark mass of people slowly approaching the whisker-marked kid. The last thing he ever saw was a broken beer bottle heading for his head. There's been simply too much damage to repair them. Naruto slowly regained consciousness and opened his eyes. Or tried to. He felt bandages on his face. He tried to move his body, but it wouldn't respond. Finally relenting, the boy instead listened in on the conversation. Are you sure there's nothing that can be done? A deep and old cracked voice asked. The Hokage. There was silence for the answer. After a few moments, the door to his room opened, and the man walked in. His footsteps are hard to hear over the louder ones of the apparent doctor. When will he wake up? The doctor sighed. It's hard to say. There was a large amount of mental trauma. He had a lot of internal bleeding in various places across his body, as well as broken bones, and large external cuts as well. There's of course the large jagged cuts across his face, leading to the doctor being silent for a moment more. Of course he was healing even before Weasel entered the door, so the initial damage might have been even worse. He's taken a lot of damage. That level of damage is not something that grown men can come back sane from, much less a kid. Naruto felt a hand brush his hair back. Is there a chance that his regenerative abilities might help his eyes? His eyes? No, Hokage-sama. Maybe if the seal was opened a bit more at the time of the occurrence, but by now the wounds have closed, and the chakra coils around them have been too damaged. Even if there was more, the doctor paused. In my professional opinion, sir, even Tsunade might not be able to help his sight. Not after the searing, at least. A seal. A wound. His chakra coils. His sight. What's going on? He felt the hand brush his hair back. The Hokage-aged old hand was soothing on the boy's head. He spoke in a soft cracked voice, as if he strained it earlier. I'm sorry Naruto. I failed you. Failed. With that the weight of his hand left the boy's head, and the two sets of footsteps walked out the door only to close. Naruto tried to think what was going on. He tried to move his body again, but when his right hand twitched he felt a large amount of pain, and passed out. Naruto, currently sitting in his bed, was honestly bored out of his mind. Stuck in this white hospital room. Unbearable silence being the only dominant presence that Naruto could feel. He knew the room was white, just that the bandages on his face kept him from opening his eyes. It had been a week since the incident, and Naruto was ready to take off his bandages, and get out of this dull stuffy room. The door opened, and Naruto turned his head to it. The doctor came into the room followed by the softer footstep he came to recognize as the Hokage's. Naruto, the old man started. How have you been? Great, old man. I can't wait to get out of this stuffy room. Usually, the old man would chuckle and hurry the boy along with a smile. This time though, his answer was only a somber silence. Naruto, there's something you need to know, the Hokage said slowly and softly. Naruto stayed quiet for once, sensing this was something important, if the sad undertone the boy heard was any indicator. The old man took a step forward and touched this boy's face with his hand. A finger traced across the boy's eyes that were hidden under his bandages. During the attack, he hesitated. The old man never hesitated. Except for when the boy would ask why people would attack him. Connecting the dots, Naruto waited for his answer for a long time. During the attack, someone cut across your face with a broken bottle which cut your eyes. Then he burned the insides of your eyes away. So what, old man? They'll heal like everything else. The kid just wanted to get out of this damned hospital. He didn't get the answer as to why. No Naruto. The burning was permanent. I'm sorry, but the Hokage lifted the bandages from the boy's face. Naruto opened his eyes, but all he saw was darkness. You're blind, Naruto, the old man finished with a sad tone. Naruto slowly lifted his hands up to his face. Then flashback, Naruto felt his eyes under his sunglasses. They were there, but according to the fire shadow, he did not have the blues of his eyes anymore. It was just white with a black spot where their eyes used to be. That was almost a year ago. At first, Naruto had to have an escort in the form of one weasel, the only Anbu he could trust. The boy would stumble across the streets as his blue sandals would catch on things he couldn't see. He would sometimes fall. Sometimes the Anbu would catch him, other times he fell flat on his face. After some trial and error, the boy learned that if he walked barefoot, he could feel his way around the town better due to the cracks and bricks in the street having a particular pattern to them, so he would know when to turn and where to dodge. Now, he can walk clear from one side of the village to the other without so much as a single stumble. However, despite his adaptability to his situation, he was barred from entering the ninja academy. They always muttered something about blind demons not allowed into their school. The situation only got worse as people started to attack the blind demon, thinking he was weak and helpless. Because of this, Naruto's ability to hear had heightened. If he failed to hear an ambush before it came, Naruto shivered. He had been in the hospital 10 more times this last year. After the 11th attempt, which he barely escaped, Weasel approached the boy and told him how to hear the world around him and notice things about it. As a ninja who has fought in many battles, the Weasel said, "You have to learn how to use all of your senses." When Naruto asked what the man meant, "Humans have 12 senses, Naruto-san." When he asked what the 12 were, all he got was a chuckle. Naruto pondered what those 12 were. So far, all he had were sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. That was 5. He would have headed down to the library to read up on that, but 2 things barred his path. 1, he couldn't read because he was blind. And 2, the librarian was a Reno. So instead, he asked people he knew, like the 2 ramen chefs at that one friendly ramen stand. They gave the same answer he had from the beginning. Naruto entered his apartment, only to stiffen when he heard a slight sound of someone breathing. The kid quickly pulled out a kunai and asked, "Who's there?" "It's me, Naruto." "Weasel," Naruto acknowledged, and put his kunai away. "You sensed me, that was good, Naruto-kun," Weasel said with some pride. "Well, I had a good teacher, Weasel-sensei," Naruto said while sitting down on the couch. There was silence for a moment, but it was a comfortable one to the blind boy. "Naruto." "Yes?" The blonde lifted his head up and looked in the general direction he heard the voice come from. "Remember when I told you about how humans have 12 senses?" the man asked. Naruto nodded. "Well, I have to leave in 2 months from now, and during this time I wish to teach you the significance of those 12 senses to you." Naruto smiled for the first time in a month, though he wondered what his sensei meant. 3 months later. Ever since the Uchiha massacre, things got worse for the blind blonde. It got to a point that the blonde had to wear brown and gray clothes to blend in with the environment. Without his escort turned traitor, the blonde was on his own. He couldn't even get close to the Hokage tower anymore. They would chase him. He was blamed for the deaths of the Uchiha clan. Word had gotten around that the kid's escort was one Uchiha Itachi. According to the rumors, he was the entire reason that the man had gone insane and exterminated his entire clan. Well, almost exterminated, because the man had left his younger brother behind. The rumors around said that the holy boy, one Uchiha Sasuke, had, at the last moment, made his brother see the light, and the ex-Anbu ran away with tears in his eyes. Of course, the Hokage denied all of these accusations, but no one listened. You'd think the old man would have learned by now, right? However, today was the worst. Today was his birthday. He had tried to run, tried to use everything that Weasel had taught him, but in the end, a ninja, from how the man fell to the kid, had caught him. The boy was being dragged on a rope by a man while many around him poked and prodded the boy with pointy objects. The rope around the boy's neck. He struggled with his hands to keep it from choking him. Start song Ray Charles Hit the Road Jack, 2010 digitally remastered studio version. The mob walked up to the gate. The boy heard the gate doors being opened. The boy felt that he was picked up by 2 men, and then tossed a large distance. The boy wailed in the air, but he knew that he was going to hit his face into the ground. His small body bounced a few times across the uneven ground. "And don't come back, you damn demon. Yeah, we don't want your kind around anymore." Why? Why did they treat him like this? He tried to stand, only to get pain in response. It was no good. He couldn't use what his teacher taught him. He couldn't escape from a drunk mob. And now, he couldn't even move his badly damaged body. His instincts kicked in, and the boy slowly dragged himself away from his once home with his only working arm. He thought of all the times that the villagers sneered at him, and laughed when he was hurt. Of all the times that Weasel had come into his apartment smelling of blood, and sounded wary of the world around him. His mind knew that he had to find some place to crawl into, and lick his wounds. He thought of the attacks on his person. The injuries sustained. The loss of his sight. He squirmed his abused body into a tree. The boy vowed to pay the village back tenfold. The Hokage sighed. He took a quick look at a picture of his favorite blonde kid. With the loss of his sight, the blonde had lost a lot of his apparently limitless exuberant energy, and instead channeled that to learn about his now limited world. The kid just had things so hard. Seeing as it was the kid's birthday, he thought to go visit the kid before he turned in for the night. With that thought in mind, the old man stood up and sunshined his way to the apartment of his unruly grandson. He opened the door with a smile only to lose it as he took in the ransacked settings of the once clean apartment. He paled and quickly called for his Anbu. 3 men fell from their hiding places. Where were you? The boy should be in this apartment, safe. And here I find it ransacked. Explain. The dog mask said, we don't know, Hokage-sama. There was a hint of something that made the old man uneasy. One moment he was here, the next dog gestured to the room. We'll talk later, dog. The old man flared his chakra. Several more Anbu entered the room. Put the village on high alert. Naruto's missing, and we need to find him. Bring him straight to me unharmed. Many of them nodded, some were hesitant. It would be many years until Naruto was seen again. The sense of tasting. Located in the tongue. This sense is inactive until you put something in your mouth. This sense has the third longest memory same ascent. 2 seconds. This sense is usually not used in battle, but if trained correctly, it can sense poisons in food. It also has the potential of sensing love from those we find precious. Strangely enough, we can find out a lot about our world through this sense. The lone figure slurped up the last of the noodles in his bowl. He set the bowl down, and leaned back to burp, and pat his belly. I haven't had ramen this good in a long time. My compliments to the chef. Sure thing, sir, a young woman behind the counter responded. The figure stood from his place at the stand, and started to walk down the street. Weaving into the crowd, he disappeared from sight. The blonde they know as Uzumaki Naruto was beaten, tied, and then left for dead. For their betrayal, something dark and twisted awoke in the boy's soul. Whether that darkness overtakes him or not, is up to Konoha. The Hokage sighed. This paperwork just seemed endless. He glared at the stacks of paper, but got nothing in return. Seeing as he was losing it, he sat back, and rubbed his face. After he sat back up he started to reread the report in front of him. It was the latest from Jiraiya. Apparently, there were several C to A ranked unknown ninjas out in the world. More than he would have liked. While this wasn't the first set to have been given to him, he was trying to discern if any of these were. He shook his head. It was impossible. The boy was blind. He'd be lucky to find his way down a rocky brick road, much less killing of high-class targets. The old man placed the document to the side, and continued on with the rest of his paperwork for the day. Before he got into the work too deeply, he glanced up at a photo of him, and young Naruto. Back before the incident when the boy lost his sight. It's been almost 5 years since he's gone missing. This entire time, he's had Jiraiya keep his ear to the ground in search of his long-lost foster grandson. So far, he's gotten reports on several individuals, but none of them sounded like the boy. He had no ninja training. He was blind. He was mentally stunted. But the Hokage shook his head. The boy may be an Uzumaki, but he was definitely not able to surpass blindness. He just hoped the boy would be found soon. They needed him. It's been almost 5 years. 5 years since he cried one last time. 5 years since they had tossed him out of the village. 5 years since he vowed to pay them back for what they did to him. Tenfold. The figure walked up to the Hokage tower. Just as the Hokage had finished up for the day, he got a knock on the door. Enter. The doors opened to a figure dressed in black Anbu-style pants, and a plain gray t-shirt. Over this he wore a long black trench coat that had a hood over the figure's head, completely shadowing the face. From what the old man could see, there was a face mask that started from under the gray t-shirt. The young man also wore black fingerless gloves with a metal plate on the back of his hand. The metal plates looked to have a large amount of scratch marks on them, suggesting the figure had high reaction times to CQC. Along the knuckles was some curved metal to take the shape of the knuckles when a fist was formed. Strangely enough, all the figure wore on his feet were a pair of thin black socks, scratch that, black thin leather shoes that went up the ankle, and covered the bottom part of the pants. Around the shins and forearms were more metal plates that also had scratches on them like the metal plates on his hands. The metal plates were also dull black in color, instead of bright silver like the norm. Hello, young man. What do you need? The Hokage said in a smooth but firm voice. The figure was silent for a moment as if thinking. A deep voice spoke up. I was wondering if I could join your ranks of ninjas. He sounded like he didn't use his voice very much. The Hokage narrowed his eyes. And why should I do that, stranger? The figure lifted his head for a second before he lowered it again. Ah, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Ishiki Fume. The Hokage's eyes flickered to the report that was on his desk. The most recent one from Jiraiya. Ah yes, he looked back up to the figure. I've heard of you. An A-rank lone nin. No known village affiliation. Former alias. Kuro no Haishi. No known partners. Good skills. The Hokage stopped. His voice became deeper, and now you wish to join my village. Why? For the final word, the old man placed some authoritative tone in his voice. The life of a lone nin is harsh, Sandame-san. To constantly have to look over your own shoulder while in the heat of battle, Ishiki paused. I simply wish to join a village that was known for its teamwork. Hence, why I'm here now. Not only am I highly skilled and able to take on jobs that would most likely need teams, but I can also work with others to be able to pull it off more efficiently. The Hokage nodded. He knew the life of a mercnin was harsh. Every mercenary was out for themselves. Most low-rank mercnin could give a struggle for battle. An A-rank one could, and would be able to hold his own in many battles. The reasons that the Merknian gave were substantial ones. Still, that didn't mean he could let his guard down. He sat there for moments contemplating his decision. The figure in front of him stood motionless while he pondered. The 5'6" figure looks battle-hardened. The hands were always at the ready. Relaxed, yes, but still in a good position to react accordingly. Before I answer, would you be so kind as to show or tell me of your real identity? The Hokage asked. The Merknian shook his head. I'm sorry, Hokage-san, but I do not wish to get out just yet. In case it doesn't work out for me here in the village, that is. Maybe when I see that I can trust you, I'll let you know. Then how do I know you are who you say you are? When the Merknian tilted his head, the Hokage continued to explain. I have had several people before you tell me that they were high-ranked Merknian or a missing nin from another village, major or no. Do you have any proof to value who you say you are? The Merknian nodded at the explanation. He pulled a pack, which Sarutobi didn't notice earlier, from his back, and searched through it. The young man then pulled out a small card, and stepped forward to place it on the desk. The professor picked it up, and looked it over. The card was one used for people to get into the drop-off points, places where bounties could be turned in by those not affiliated with villages or high-value targets that could escape easily. It showed a full-body picture of the current man standing before him. Kuro no Haishi was titled in the place of name. In the place of most of the stats was a question mark like age, facial features, and abilities. The only way to confirm the verification of the man before him was the fact that it talked about a tattoo on the young man's left arm. When he looked up, he saw that the young man had uncovered his left arm just enough to show the tattoo of a young wolf. He closed his eyes for a moment before opening. Alright, I'll let you join the village. But you will have to start from the very bottom. Genin. And you will be put on probation. The figure nodded his head slowly. I understand. Furthermore, I will have to bring your information before the council. Would you like to be there? Fume nodded. The Hokage sighed, and brought out the recent Genin graduates list. He looked over their numbers. What are your abilities? At this, Fume tensed a little before relaxing. I do not wish to give out all of my abilities, Hokage-san. No offense to you of course, but the Hokage nodded back. I understand, Ishiki-san. I merely mean where you are best in a given situation. I assume you're a close-range fighter. He gestured to the metal on the arms and legs. Ishiki nodded. Yes, and I do have some medium-ranged and long-range techniques. It helps when you have a counter for everything. Anything else? The young man lifted his head a little. Well, I do have excellent short-range tracking skills, as well as good long-range tracking skills. I can protect more than just me, as I have had escort missions in the past. I have excellent stealth capabilities, as that should seem obvious. My aim is true well beyond most. Any Kenjutsu? The merc shook his head. No, Hokage-san. Swords and weapons of the like just get broken and lost out in the field. The Hokage nodded his head. I think I have just the spot for you. Our recent set of academy graduates are short one person, so I'll put you on one of their teams. The Hokage wrote something down. Be in this classroom tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock sharp. He held out the note. Fume walked forward cautiously and took the note. He then handed over a hit-eye. Welcome to Konoha, Ishiki-san. If you would please show up tomorrow after the team meeting at the council hall so that we can officially place you in our ranks. Fume tied the headband around his arm and turned around. Thank you for being generous and hearing me out, Sandame-sama. The lone nin walked away slowly towards the door. By the way, I noticed that most of your ninjas are running about looking for something, and even getting into the village was a bit more of a hassle. The Hokage sighed. Yes, you were right. One of my Chunin teachers from the academy stole something and managed to get away. We have patrols going out to search for him as fast as we can. You didn't see anything while coming to Konoha, did you? Fume shook his head. No, Hokage-sama. I didn't see anything like that on my way here. The Hokage could tell it was the whole truth. Alright, then you're dismissed, Fume-san. The new Konoha ninja walked out the door and closed it after him, but not before a barely heard whisper flowed through the air. I'll see you later, Oji-san. The Hokage quickly stood to his feet as the young man left the room. Staring with wide eyes at the door, he blanched a little. He looked back down to the report from Jiraiya. It couldn't be. Fume walked around the village aimlessly until he wandered upon a park. The young man sat down and just let the kids play near him. No one seemed to notice him, and he was just fine with that. The young man smiled underneath his mask, remembering all the good times he had in this park, and the only promise he has yet to fulfill. He stood up when it was twilight and stretched his stiff muscles a bit. He quietly sauntered deeper into the woods and found a nice spot on a tree branch and drifted into a meditative sleep. Sit down and shut the fuck up. Fume stood outside the door to the classroom he was told to go to. Well now, this'll be interesting. Iruka had tick marks on his head. How were they supposed to be ninjas when they couldn't even hear him yell at them? The scar teacher was about to put his face in his hands when the door to his classroom opened. A young man wearing dark clothes walked in. This is Iruka's classroom, I assume. Iruka stared at the young man before realization hit his head, and he pulled a note up from his desk. Ah, you're the one Hokage-sama wrote to me about, correct? Yes. Well, introduce yourself to the class, Iruka gestured. Strangely enough, the entire class had quieted the moment the door had opened, and said class was now staring at the unknown newbie. The young man bowed for a moment before coming back up, but his head was still bowed. My name is Ishiki Fume. I hope to work well with all of you, he spoke in a dull flat tone. Good enough, Ishiki-san, Iruka stated. Go find a seat while I make a roll call one last time for this class. Ishiki nodded, and walked up the aisle. He found a spot near the back, next to the silent Hyuga girl. Iruka shrugged mentally. Maybe the man had trust issues, and didn't want anyone at his back. As Iruka-sensei was calling roll, the Hyuga heiress was having other thoughts. Who was this person? Would he sit next to her? And why did his mere presence seem to shake her heart? Iruka finished the roll call, and looked back up to his now former students. He started his last speech to the class, but mentally raged as the would-be genin started to ignore him. He summed it up quickly though, and then started to call out the new teams. Team 1, Team 7, Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, yes. Take that Ino Buta. And finally, Inuzuka Kiba. Your sensei will be Hata Kakashi. Team 8 will be Hyuga Hinata, Abiram Shino, and finally Ishiki Fume. Your sensei will be Yuhi Kurenai. Team 9 is still in. Hinata's attention shifted from Iruka to Fume, as the figure didn't even look like he had acknowledged that his name was called. In fact, he seemed to have the same amount of emotionless feeling to him as Shino gave off. She mentally nodded her head to herself. She could work with that. It'd be aggravating to listen to a loudmouth all day. It reminded her of him. Fume had the sudden urge to sneeze, but held it in. That's all the teams, Iruka finished. I wish all of you the best of luck for your future career. Please come back at 1 o'clock to meet your sensei. With that, the scarred man walked out the door. Shino shifted his attention to his thoughts. The Hyuga heiress. He knew her. She was soft-spoken, and tended to be shy. While her clan was known for its unique and deadly taijutsu style, he noted that the heiress had only moderate skill in that field, if what he remembered from the daily spars were true. Due to her clan though, she had excellent tracking skills using her. He shifted his memories to their first year in the academy. The Hyuga had been looking over the class the first day. As if she was looking for someone. When she couldn't find whoever she was looking for, she grew sad, and sat in the back with only half of her interest on the teacher's words. As time progressed, she started to talk less. Eventually she stopped talking at all, and had become something of a mute. She would just stare at the people around her. He even noted that sometimes the heiress would walk with a limp or favor one of her arms over the other. He even saw a small bruise on her neck once. That was to say, it wasn't rare for that to happen, as all clan children had training of some sort. Even Kiba had walked in with a black eye once, but was all smiles still. Shino turned his thoughts back to here, and now, and looked at his other teammate. An enigma. He was polite, and not arrogant, that much he could gather from Ishiki's introduction. But not much else. From the way he walked it was like he knew where everything was, even though the teenager had never lifted his hood to see where there was an empty seat. He would have to keep an eye on this enigma. Shino stood up, and walked over to the two. As he approached, the enigma talked first. Hyuga-san, and Abiram-san, I presume. Shino spoke quietly in return. Yes. Abiram clan. Known for their use on the battlefield as well as high levels of observation of the world around them. They are emotionless to a degree to help control their insects. With their insects in tandem, they can create many solutions to many problems that appear on the battlefield. Correct, Yume asked. Correct, Shino responded. Hyuga clan. Hyuga are known for their coveted Byakugan, or white eyes. Also known as evil eye, and all-seeing white eye. The Hyuga are known for their taijutsu battle prowess, and little escapes their attention well in battle. They are currently the strongest of the least shinobi clans. Correct, he asked again. The Hyuga nodded in return. You know so much about our clans, Ishiki-san, but we know so little about you. Care to tell us a little about yourself, Shino asked. He mentally added knowledgeable to the list of things this enigma was. At the same time, he wondered if the teenager knew if the heiress nodded or not. Fume was silent for a moment, as if in contemplation, and then spoke. I guess I should. As you know, I am Ishiki Fume. I am an ex-merchant. I have no previous affiliation with any village in the past. I am a close-range fighter specialist, but I also have long-range and mid-range support capabilities. I have good to excellent tracking skills, and I have high skills in stealth. As you should assume, I am able to look out for myself on the field, Abiram-san. Shino nodded. I understand, Ishiki-san. Would you like to join me for lunch? It would be logical to bond a little as we will be teammates for quite some time. I shall. What of you, Hyuga-san? Ishiki asked in his flat tone. Hinata nodded. Good. Do either of you have any suggestions, as I don't know any good places to eat at? I just came into Konoha a couple of days ago, Ishiki finished. So he did know that she nodded. Shino furrowed his eyebrows a little, an action only his father would see. He stored this information away for later. Yes. I know of one. A barbecue restaurant just down the street. There we can eat, and talk until our time to meet our sensei. With that, Fume stood up, and so did Hinata. Lead the way, Abiram-san. 1 p.m. Hinata had enjoyed lunch with the two boys. Make that two young men. They seemed polite to her as they all ate quietly the entire visit to the barbecue. Little words were said other than common greetings to the waitress and the host. It was a comfortable silence that the three had eaten in. No words were needed. They all seemed to understand each other through sheer body language. The three of them knew they were to be a team and as thus, had to work together. All three sat down in the back of the classroom to wait for their sensei to arrive. They weren't the first back, but they weren't the last either. They had come and gone. Eventually, the raven-haired woman with red eyes walked in through the doors. Teammate, you're with me. And right back out the door. The three genin stood up and walked down the aisle and out the door once more to follow their now identified sensei. Down the hall was their sensei waiting by the front door. When she saw them, she turned out the door and walked into the sun. They followed her outside to see her just turning right outside of the gate to the academy grounds. When they reached the gate, they looked around just to see her as she turned onto another street. After about an hour's worth of a game of cat and mouse, the three had finally walked up to their sensei in an empty training ground. Their sensei's back was facing them and seemed to be in a relaxed posture. When they came within 10 feet of her, she turned around and smiled at them. Hello, Team 9. I am your sensei, Yuhi Kurenai. Welcome to Training Ground 23. This is where you'll be taking one last test. The three genin stayed silent, viewing their sensei with suspicion while the third had his eyes covered by his cloak. Hinata didn't know what was going on, but she had a clue. Her sensei decided that the silence was long enough and filled them in. This is the final genin test. The failure rate is 66%. The genin examination just weeded out those not ready for the life of genin. This test is to see if you are genuine material, Kurenai spoke in a firm tone. Your test is to find me using all of the skills that you have at your fingertips. I can be anywhere within Konoha or the training grounds just outside of its walls. If you do find me, then you pass. If you do not find me by sunset, then you fail and will be sent back to the academy. Any questions? No answer. Then start. With that, they simply vanished from their sight. Hinata quickly activated her eyes. She was never in the field to begin with, Fume stated. I assumed the same, Shino said as well. Hinata physically turned her head to look at them, though the action was not needed when she had her eyes activated. Fume explained, what you were seeing the entire time was A. In fact, the only time you ever saw her was in the academy classroom where I suspect she placed them on us. Shino spoke up, how do you think we should approach this? Why me? Fume asked in a neutral tone. Shino said, well, you have the most experience on the field of the three of us. The girl had to agree. So she nodded her own head. Fume was silent for a moment more. Abiram-san, were you able to plant a bug on her? Shino shook his head. Fume hummed and then spoke, and she was bouncing her chakra everywhere, so I couldn't pinpoint her location when she used it. I guess she's for a reason. However, we are supposed to be a tracker squad due to our abilities. Shino nodded in agreement. We should gather information first, as that would be much better than searching all over for her. The Hyuga heiress nodded her head. Fume turned to look at her. Where should we start? You know her better than us, Fume stated. Hinata stared at him a moment more. How did he know that? I'll explain my abilities later, Hyuga-san. For now, I wish to get this test over with. The girl nodded her head, and made a follow-me gesture with her hand. She took off into the woods with both males following after her. So, you came to me first, eh brats? The woman in front of them spoke when the three had entered the Dango restaurant. Shino nodded his head. I told Kurenai that Hinata-chan here is smarter than she lets on. Well, anyways, I was told to give you one clue. Where can you stand on a hero and see the village? She said her clue, then went back to eating her dango. Fume turned around and headed out the door. Come, I think I know where she meant. With that, he took off towards the back of the village. Shino looked at his teammate as she stared back. They both shrugged and left after him. 10 minutes later, the three were standing on top of the Hokage monument. Specifically, Yondame's head. Their note was sitting. Fume walked up to the note and picked it up. Heroes have come and gone. New heroes arise on the ones of the fallen and strive forward to a new world. However, we all need to be able to look upon the fallen to honor them. Where am I? It's just as I thought, an old voice spoke in a room. Hokage-sama, a woman asked. That's an old man thinking here, Kurenai-san. Though, you might want to get into position soon. They'll be there within the hour at this pace. Shino thought hard about what this clue would mean. Where are the dead honored? A monument of sorts. Ah, how could he almost forget that? Follow me, Shino said. And turned to go back down the mountain. They moved back into the training areas that outlined the outside of the village. Shino is the leader of the group. Training Ground 7. Known for many things. The training ground of the 4th Hokage, his team, and one last important thing. A monument for the dead. To honor those fallen in battle, Shino spoke in an even tone. The other two nodded and continued to follow him. A few seconds later they were standing before a small monument filled with names. Standing in front of it was a man with gravity-defying hair. I assume you're a teammate. I was told to give this to you, the man said in a relaxed tone. He held up a note. Fume stepped forward and took the note. He opened it up, but didn't look at it. You have done well to get this far, but now it's about time we go full circle. This is the final clue, and I am where we have met. The three pondered it for a moment before Shino spoke up again. Didn't you say we only saw her at the academy? The other two nodded while Fume responded. Good thinking, Abiram-san. Let's move. We have 4 hours left. They moved quickly to the ninja academy. There, on the front door, was another note. Shino moved to pick it up. Congratulations, you pass, teammate. Meet me at training grounds 23 tomorrow morning. None of them moved. After a few moments, Fume said, too easy. Hinata nodded as Shino responded, I concur. Her rules plainly stated that we had to find her. Not a note. First rule about being a ninja, deception, Fume put in his words. Both of his teammates were silent for a moment more. Why don't we look inside, Shino said. He opened the door, and standing there was Kurenai. She was smiling. Now, you pass. Had you left the grounds with that note in hand you would have failed. Come, meet me on the roof. Let's get to know each other better. With that she disappeared. Shino looked to Fume to silently ask if she was real. He nodded. All three jumped up the side of the building and landed on the roof. Kurenai was leaning against the railing. So, teammate. How about we get to know each other better? I'll start. My name is Yuhi Kurenai. I am your sensei. My likes are studying, osake, vodka, and my dislikes are arrogant people, sexism, and cake. My goals are to see you three become and get you as strong as I can. My dream is to make the ultimate. She paused to let the information sink in. Now it's your turn to wear a grey coat. Shino adjusted his sunglasses. My name is Abiram Shino. I am the Abiram heir. I like to study bugs, salads, and winter melons. I dislike people who judge before given all of the facts, and tofu. My goal is to become a worthy heir. My dream is to fight someone strong. Kurenai nodded. Next up, Black Jacket. Fume leaned against the railing next to him before speaking. My name is Ishiki Fume. I am an ex-merc-nin. I like training in new things, ramen, and the sunset. My dislikes are people who are ignorant of the truth and yet act like they know everything. I also dislike dango and anything too sweet. My goals and dreams are unimportant for now. Kurenai nodded at him as well. She looked back to Hinata who shook her head. Kurenai frowned and sighed before speaking. I'll speak for the girl. Her name is Hyuga Hinata. She is the Hyuga heiress. She likes pressing flowers, tea ceremonies, the girl pointed to her, and me, apparently. Her favorite foods are cinnamon rolls. She dislikes the girl pointed to her head. She dislikes the Hyuga branch branding seal. She doesn't like crabs and shrimp. Her goal is to become a respectable kunoichi. The girl nodded. And her dream is to rid her clan of the branding seal. The girl motioned once more as if looking for something. And to find her lost savior. She looked back to all of her students. Does anyone have any questions? Hinata raised her hand a little. Yes, Hinata-chan. She pointed to Fume, then herself, and then to Kurenai. Oh, I get what she's asking, Fume said. Well, she's asking how I knew that she knew you best, he said. Kurenai had a confused look on her face. What I mean is, how did I know that Hinata-san knew Kurenai-san well? Hinata nodded. Well, that goes along with my abilities. Humans have many senses. I merely use one of them to see a connection between the two of you, Naruto stated. Many senses, he asked. Yume nodded. Yes, but that's for another time. I believe you had more to say to us, Kurenai-sensei. They looked at her student carefully. Alright, she looked back at the other two. As of now we are all officially teammate. I have to get back to Hokage-sama to put in my report of your passing. Meet me at training ground 23 tomorrow morning at 7 for initial training, and our first mission. Dismiss. Oh, and Hinata-chan, good job. With that the mistress disappeared from sight in a pop of smoke. With that the three turned to one another. Ishiki spoke first. I guess that we call it a day. His two teammates nodded. The three went their separate directions from the rooftop. As he was heading to the Hokage tower, he passed by his old apartment complex. It had been burned down, from the looks of it. No one had even bothered to clean up afterwards. A thought from the past echoed in his head. They will pay. The teenager shook his head. Patience, he told himself. He'll get his revenge yet. In his office, the Hokage shivered slightly. He felt a bad omen coming to the doorsteps of his village. The sense of smelling. Located in the nose. This sense is mostly inactive unless a strong smell comes by or we focus on it. This sense has the third longest MEMORY same as taste. 2 seconds. This sense has the highest potential to trigger memories. This sense is also useful to those with stronger noses, as they can smell the subtle nuances in how the world around them changes. This sense is used the most in cooking or checking for a trail. Tracking isn't as hard as people make it sound to be. Really, it's just a combination of heightened senses looking for signs that aren't actually natural. Anyone with a 2-bit brain could do it easily if trained. Then again, he was a prodigy, if his so-called emo-sensei had said anything about that. There was also the fact that all of his senses were beyond human, but he could safely blame that on other sources. Now all he had to do was figure out how that damned cat could be so elusive. A mysterious visitor comes from outside the village. dressed in all black, has this dark figure merely left his lone wolf life to join them? The professor hopes this is so. However, deep down the old man knows that dark tidings overshadow the village. Teammate reporting for mission completion of the capturing of the cat named Tor, they stated as she and her team walked into the mission room. The cat was being held by a calm Hinata, and she was purring in the Genin's arms. "Oh, my baby, Tor. Oh, how could you run away from mommy like that?" Just like that, the cat went from heaven to hell in one fell swoop. The three Genin silently pitied this small tiger. "Well done, teammate. Well done," the old man said with pride. "Now, do you want to take another mission?" Kurenai spoke up. "I was wondering if we could get our first C-ranked mission." Their two recruits looked at her, one with surprise, while the other had a raised eyebrow. The third just stayed still, but did appear more attentive. It has been 3.5 months since the team was put together. During that time, the three had bonded quite easily, if Kurenai had anything to say about that. They worked well as a team, despite some of the unbalancing that Ishiki brought into the team. It helped that all three were quiet and very passive when not in a battle situation. During her team exercises, all three listened when the other spoke, or in Hinata's case, hands signed. That was another thing that the team was learning as a whole. They had created their own sign language. Non-verbal gestures that would be meaningless to anyone else meant entire sentences to them. Since all three had an omnidirectional sense, they could be a good range from each other, and not in a direct line of sight, and still be able to communicate non-verbally. Hinata had her Byakugan. Shino had his bugs on his teammates. Ishiki could somehow see all around him, though he never did explain that. With those three abilities, the team had officially been dubbed, by the ever-loving populace of Konoha, Team Silent. Heck, she hasn't heard them talk to each other in almost a week now, but they were still communicating. However, try as she might, she hadn't been able to learn it herself. Not that she really tried. She was happy they found themselves a way to bond even further. If she needed one of them to relay what Hinata was saying, she would ask Ishiki or Shino. One thing she did notice though was that the signing evolved as time went on. They were adding more and more gestures to their language. She didn't know when they had set it up, but somehow they had. It started off small and unobtrusive. Basic hand signs that were used in a large number of circumstances, like the move signal or the stop. Over time, they stopped using the basics. It even got to a point where they created completely new hand signs, so that no one would be able to figure out what they said. Individually, the three were progressing nicely in their suggested fields. Hinata and Shino were still getting private clan training, but, at the advice of Ishiki, they all took up one other thing outside of clan skills. Ishiki suggested to Shino that it would be easy for Shino to distribute them. They also required little chakra to activate. Another thing was that they had a large variety of things that seals could do. The next day, Shino showed up with a beginner's seal book. Ishiki also asked him to study Taijutsu a little as well. The tall boy's potential in the field would go to waste otherwise. Kurenai had to agree. To Hinata, Ishiki had suggested taking up a weapon of some kind that would take advantage of the girl's lithe body. The girl had blushed a little at the weapon Ishiki had suggested. A whip. It made sense to Kurenai as the whip in question could channel chakra to the tip and deliver the same strike that she could with the tip of her finger. It increased the girl's range by a factor of 4 with a 9-foot-long whip. Said whip was now attached to the girl's hip. When the girl had to rest her legs, Ishiki had produced a medical book for the girl. Those eyes could save more lives than even Senjutsunate. That didn't mean that Kurenai had no help in teaching her own students. No, she made sure that all of them had lessons in dispelling and creating. She worked them to the ground in daily physical exercises, so that they would all remain strong and fast. She had even added exercises she thought she would have to use later. To Shino she gauged how his body worked in the basic academy style, so that she could get some basics of his form in mind. Afterwards, she pulled some small books from a collection of books she had. While she didn't show it, she had some Taijutsu potential, and worked in several styles. She gave some books to Aburam, and had him work on the katas one at a time under her guidance. He was steadily getting stronger and faster in the styles she suggested. Aburam had agreed Jujutsu, Judo, Jujutsu, and some other styles like them were best for his fighting form. To Hinata though, that was a bit difficult. While the girl had some potential, her family's culture prohibited it. She still taught her in that form, but she had the girl agree to keep it a secret. In reality she worked with the girl's form in the whip. While Kurenai was a level ninja, she didn't have much practice in the ways of weapon techniques. She had asked her friend, Yugao, for some advice to help the girl along. It worked. The girl's lithe form, plus certain stretches that only females could do, made the girl flexible beyond even the normal scope available to women. The whip seemed to almost dance in her hands as she performed acrobatics that should be impossible. However, just because she was good, doesn't mean that she was perfect. She had to hold back the chuckle when she remembered the first time Hinata had accidentally tied herself up. In her other studies, Hinata was soaring through both her sensei's and Anko's libraries of herbology, medicines, and poisons. Then again, Hinata did have a natural affinity for such things. Ishiki, however, was the only one of them who seemed to have an aptitude for creating though. Not that the boy had a fault. He couldn't seem to make the correct visual type of, but any others he excelled at. Hell, he was even creating so far they were very effective and distracting when he uses them right. Kurenai was brought out of her path down memory lane when the Hokage produced a scroll. Here you go. The aged man tossed the scroll towards the Ice Queen. She caught it and opened up. She nodded after she had read it over and looked over to her team. They were making subtle gestures. Shino looked back to Kurenai. We're ready to go, sensei. Kurenai's eyes twitched. One of them had read the scroll and related to the others. If she had to guess, it would be Hinata or Shiki. She didn't feel any bugs. Then again, the bug boy was getting even better at hiding those things from her. It personally made her skin crawl at the thought of a bug on her skin, but she repressed it like the good she was. I take it, you already know what it says. Alright, then. She turned back to them and said in an affirmative manner, we accept the mission of rearguard patrol duty for 1 week's time. The professor nodded. Alright, go, and relieve the team at the specified time. A word of advice, bring a deck of cards. The old man chuckled as the 3 genin sword dropped. South Konoha Gate, 2200 hours. Air patrol guard is just what it means. To patrol at a close to medium range to the target. In this case, it means patrolling between 5 to 30 miles from the walls of Konohagakure. Their main area of patrol was along the eastern trade roads. Kurenai turned to her team. Alright, you 3. As you know, this is a week-long patrol mission close to the walls of Konoha. We will be patrolling along the eastern trade roads to and from the village. Be vigilant, but don't get paranoid. We will be relieving one group before us. There are 2 other groups in our area. They will most likely be. While you are under my direct control, they do have authority over you as well. As long as their orders don't usurp mine, you will obey them. Understand? The 3 nodded. Good. My orders are to stay safe. Be ready for action at all times, and report in on the scheduled times. Understood. All 3 gave a faux salute. It was their way of saying crystal clear, ma'am. She nodded back and walked up to the guards. Team silent, leaving the village for 1 week. She handed the guard the mission papers. He checked it over and gave them the go-ahead. The 3 took off immediately. You may love to be back in the woods. The buildings are nice and all, but the smell of the forest trumps the smell of that blasted village. It's been 7 days since the mission started. It's their final day. During that time, they got to know the other patrols as well. Both were 3-man teams. They warmed up to the newbies quite fast and were eager to give some advice. Seems they had been bored out of their minds. The letter produces a small but detailed map of their patrol, which the 3 genin had memorized to make sure all was well. Kurenai for the most part had sat back and let them decide how to handle their part of the patrol. When they were about to do something wrong, she would speak up, but that had only happened once. When Hinata had asked the Thrufume why she was letting them do everything, the red-eyed woman simply answered, to help you learn through experience. When they didn't like the answer, she explained, I'm not here to babysit you. I'm here to help you grow into independent shinobi and kunoichi that can work together in a team efficiently. I'll train you to be strong and fast, and give you the skill necessary to accomplish the task. To help you learn how to think when on a mission, I'll answer questions when you have them, and nudge you all in the right direction. For the most part, I'll be sitting by, and only come into play when you need me or when you want help in your training. Think of this as an exercise of trust and responsibility. The more you show that we can trust you, and you show responsibility, the less D-rank mission we go on. The more C-ranked missions we take, the more I'll train you. The more you train, the closer you'll be. They nodded. It made a lot of sense when she put it that way. When the team showed they could work together and accomplish their objectives, the more she would trust them and train them. It lets them grow into their own roles of their own system. Effective for very long-term goals. Not like he'd be staying all that long. He came out of his thoughts when he saw a group of people walk by. Hinata was tree-hopping in the middle of their patrol zone. She had her activated, and she was constantly searching inside of the zone. On the edge of her vision range, she saw Fumes start signing. Team Arrogant along Northeastern Trade Road. It looks like an escort mission. Was attacked by 2 missing from. Come quickly. Hinata came down on a branch, about-faced, and started hopping in Fume's direction again. Team Arrogant. She hated that team. It is composed of Haruno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke, and she shivered Inuzuka Kippa. Lead by Hada Kakashi. She had nothing against Inuzuka. Just Kippa. The boy would constantly try to hit on her when she did her best to ignore him. Sometimes he got a little close for comfort. She saw Shino enter her range of vision to her right, heading towards their 3rd member. So he got the message as well. When the 2 landed on the branch next to the dark-clad genin, they all saw Kakashi tying up the last of the 2 missing. Fume signed. Kiri is missing Nin. Chunin in rank. Known as the Demon Brothers. C-ranked. Hinata nodded and signed back. Are we to take them back to Konoha? Fume just shrugged his shoulders. Unknown. We asked Sensei. Shino nodded back. Agreed. We don't know how to handle this situation. Signaling Sensei. A bit ways away, Kunai felt a bug on her shoulder give her some chakra beats. It was Konoha's Morse code standard. She shifted her feet and moved in the direction she felt her students go. At the same time she shivered in realization that the bug boy was getting better at hiding those things. In a few short moments, Kurenai showed up behind them. She looked down at the situation, and saw that Kakashi was asking his team for a vote on whether or not to continue the mission. The two boys on the team arrogantly said they were going, with the girl reluctantly agreeing. She sighed, and jumped down onto the road, her team jumping down behind her. "Hello Kakashi." The masked man turned. "Ah, I thought I sensed your team nearby. Are you here to take back our intruders?" Kurenai looked at the two demon brothers. "No. We were on patrol nearby when they spotted your team, and signaled for me. Do you need us to take care of them for you?" The man shrugged his shoulders. "I was just gonna let them be picked up by our patrols. Since you are here, would you mind? We're kinda on a mission." Kurenai nodded, and created 2 solid clones to carry the downed Rougenins. "Take them to the Konoha gates. They'll know what to do with them." The 2 clones gave an affirmative, and took off. Kurenai turned back to the masked man. "Carry on, Kakashi-san." The man nodded, and turned to his students, and his clients. Kurenai turned back to her own team. "Usually, we'll get Rougenin further out, but it's not that rare for them to come in closer. Good job on knowing when to call a superior officer. Continue patrolling. We'll be back in Konoha tonight after our relief arrives." Genin nodded, and took off into the woods. Kurenai herself just disappeared. Hinata never could find out how their sensei did that. That night the next patrol team came in, and were told that they could head back to Konoha. They packed up, and moved quickly back to the gates, so that they could beat the closing time for the night. Tree hopping, Kurenai turned back to her team as she spoke. "I want to say that I'm proud of you for accomplishing your first C-rank mission as Genin of Konoha. Ishiki-san, I know you've done this before on your own, but you seem to be fitting into the team just nicely. Hinata-chan, I know using you for extended periods of time puts a strain on you, but you pull through anyway. Shino-san, you are a great communication coordinator, being able to send those signals to me quite quickly through your bugs. You 3 are working well together, despite my earlier concerns that I had about this. It's not all the time that we put a lone wolf merknin in with standard genin." Fumei just shrugged. "What can I say? I just want to come off as normal. Besides, I think I've grown attached to this team." Shino spoke a few moments later. "I agree with Ishiki-san. We are progressing nicely as a team, and under both Fumei's and your guidance we are growing ever stronger and more confident, Kurenai-sensei." Hinata's smile beamed at her. Both for the congratulations for the mission and appreciation for her sensei. Kurenai smiled, and flipped in mid-air to land on a branch for a moment, then took off at a slightly faster pace. Their team may be soft-spoken, but they were good kids. "You made it just before the last call, Team Silent," one of the gate guards stated. Kurenai sighed in relief. "Good, we don't have to camp out for another night." She turned to her genin squad. "You 3 head on home to rest for the night. I'll turn in the paperwork to get the mission completed." They nodded, and started roof-topping in different directions. Kurenai headed up to the Hokage mansion in mere moments thanks to the Shunshin. She walked in, and headed up the stairs, and lightly knocked on the door, and walked in. "Come." They opened the door, and walked in. "Team Silent Sensei, Yuhi Kurenai, reported success." "Good. Where is your team?" the aged man asked. "I had them head home for the night." "You can congratulate them in the morning for their good job," Kurenai said. The old man nodded, and then sat up a little straighter. The Hokage spoke softly. "What do you think of our little ex-merknin?" The sensei was silent for a moment to gather her thoughts. While the words were innocent, the intentions were serious. He wanted to know if he was trustworthy. "During our patrols, it seemed to me that Fumei-san never took off his hood, at least whenever I was around. It could be an injury that he's ashamed of, or his face is highly recognizable to a powerful man, and had to hide his face so he wouldn't be found out. He's also quiet, and never speaks very much. When he does speak, it's often in a soft, but deep voice. I also noticed that he never sleeps in a tent, or in a sleeping bag for that matter. Always using a tree limb to sit on for the night. He also stirs easily in his sleep, pointing to that even though he's asleep, he is still aware of his surroundings. I had to be incredibly subtle for him not to notice me watching some of his actions, and even then I think he noticed anyway. His observational skills are indeed honed to a ridiculous degree, but I can't blame the young man. This all leads me to believe he's more skilled than he's letting on, and probably on par with me if what he's creating after just a little nudge says anything. His potential in any field through his sheer observational skills seems to exceed even Itachi's, and we both know how over the top he was. He also has the ability to teach well, as both Shino and Hinata have taken teaching from him, and have gotten quite strong. He spurs them on to greater and greater potentials, and can even hold toe-to-toe with them, both sparring against him at the same time, making his taijutsu above genin. Maybe high at most from what I've seen. At the same time, as I've said before, it seems like he's holding back. Like his body tenses for a quick combo, but only goes through with 1 or 2 motions. Honestly, if I had to rank him, he'd be at high B rank. The Hokage nodded as he took in this info. He took out a report, and placed it at the edge of his desk. "I wanted to see if he really was who he says he is before I even gave you this. Here is his file that Jiraiya himself compassed on one Ishiki Fumei. Please read it through." Kurenai nodded and picked up the file, quietly reading the report through. Hokage-sama. This can't be true. Why would you put an A-rank mercenary on a genin team? Just read the rest of the way through if you would please, the Hokage responded. Moments passed by as she flipped through the papers. When she reached the last page, she gasped and looked back up to the Hokage as if for reassurance. The old man nodded. Yes, and now I have to tell you that this is an A-rank secret, need-to-know basis only. I don't know what he's doing back here in Konoha after all these years when he could have just stayed missing. Honestly, with the circumstances that led to his disappearance quite some time ago, I can't say that all of his intentions are good. The silence in the room as the information sank in was deep. I have an ongoing mission for you, Kurenai-san. Watch him as much as you can without letting him know that you know. If he just wants to start with a blank slate, then let him. I love that boy with all my heart. He was like a surrogate grandson to me, and I had failed him and his family so many times. I don't want to say this, however, if you find proof of treachery. Kurenai slowly nodded. I understand, Hokage-sama. I will watch him closely and report anything negative to think that he is. The old man smiled reassuringly. I know somewhere deep down this boy is good, Kurenai-san. We just have to bring it out of him. He was such a hyper kid when he was younger. So full of energy and filled with life. Please, work with him. Show him that Konoha can let go of his grudges. I know I can trust you. You were one of 3 people that even cared for him as a baby. I'll do my best. Hokage-sama, Kurenai bowed. If I may ask, who else knows? Well, of course myself, Jiraiya, and yourself. Then there's Mike Guy from Team 9, the Jounin commander. Shikaku-san, toward the Anbu, and finally the Anbu captain commander. Itsuro. That about sums up who knows this secret. If you need advice, and I'm not around, talk to one of these 5 as they should be able to help you. This secret is codenamed Blackchild. Just mention it to them in a private setting. Kurenai nodded, and went to leave with a lot on her mind. After the woman left, the old man slumped a little. To think our precious weapon would come back to us. Now, we just have to make sure that he won't backfire, Danzo-san. Indeed. A man with a cane said as he walked into the room from a secret door. How are things on your end? The professor asked. Danzo just smiled a bit. The seal is ready. All we have to do is lure him into place. Good. Let's do it after the exams. I have too much on my plate as it is now. Unknown to both of them, a shadow slowly moved away from the window and jumped off into the streets. To think he used to love the old bastard. 3 days later. You want us to do what, Hokage-sama? You heard me, Kurenai-san. I want you and your team to go back up to Team 7. They were attacked by Mamachi's abuser, and Kakashi had requested backup via Nindog. You to go as backup for their main objective. They had spent the last few days getting rest and doing 1 D rank. Thinking they'd be doing more D ranks, the team was surprised by the sudden request. She couldn't really argue. The old man knew what was best, right? She turned her head to her team. Alright, I guess we got our first A rank mission. Damn Kakashi, why couldn't he obey protocol just once? The genin looked at each other before looking back to their senses. Shino said, are there any special orders, Kurenai-san? No, just my usual. Stay alive. Meet me at the east gate in 2 hours. I have to go pick something up. The team had left the gates behind them and moved at a relatively fast pace. They had made it to the seaside edge within due time, though somewhat boring. After that, the water walked across. Once on the other side, she turned to her team. Okay, you all remember what I told you on your first day of training. Flashback, Training Ground 23. Welcome back to Training Ground 23, you 3, the woman said with a smile. We're officially teammate now. As a team, that means we work together to complete our tasks. You did so yesterday when you took my last test. This team's goal is to work on tracking. Originally, we were supposed to get Kiba. When she said that, Hinata tensed a little. Kurenai continued. But at the last minute, we instead got a Shikifume-san here. Even with a different member, our goal is still the same. Become an excellent first response tracking team. Our main objectives are to track and be a first response group to any situation. We have our strategist and long-range attacker in the form of Shino here. We have a close-range attacker and a long-range tracker in the form of Hinata. And from what I got from the Hokage, an all-around tracker and fighter with the Shiki-san. Together, we'll work on your abilities to act and respond as a team that can easily chase down and either capture or kill the objective. To do that, we'll need to build up your speed, stamina, tracking skills, stun techniques, ambush skills, anti-ambush, anti-anti-ambush. The 3 genin sweat dropped when she said that, and quick kill techniques. She took a deep breath and then smiled. Don't worry, we won't be working on all of that at the same time. For now, we'll be working on the first 4. Speed, stamina, tracking, and stun. Any questions? They shook their heads. Alright, but before we get started, and flashback. Since that day she had been training them in the 4 she mentioned. Her 3 genin nodded. Good. We'll be using those skills I've been training you in to track down the location of your fellow team. Where do you think we should start? She asked them. Shino pondered this for a moment before speaking up. We could head to the nearest town first. One of the locals would have seen the other team walk through. If not, we could look for people with a similar look. Failing that, we could ask to see if they are living with their escort. The other three nodded, and did just that. They followed a road they found by following the seashore, and with that went to the nearest, and possibly the only village on the island. When they reached the town, all four members noticed the run-down state that the people were living in. What they didn't expect was to see a head of pink hair walking alongside a raven-haired woman. The team quickly approached them. Kurenai in front. Jin and Haruno Sakura of Team 7, correct, the lead asked. The two were startled by the sudden voice behind them. Both FEMALES, if you can call Sakura that, twirled around to see them. Relax, Kurenai said. I'm Leaf Nin, as are my team. Now, report Jenin. The pink-haired girl nodded while the woman looked to see the three Jenin behind her. Well, we started our mission, and along the way here we were attacked by the demon brothers. I think that's what Kakashi-sensei called them. Sasuke totally had them. Teammate Sweat dropped at the sight since that was what most definitely not happened having witnessed it, and all. After Kakashi came in, and knocked the other one unconscious, we went on, and were attacked by Momomoa. Momochi Zabuza, Kurenai helpfully stated. That's him. We were attacked by Zabuza, and during the attack, Sasuke had to save Sensei from this weird waterball thingy. Sasuke-kun was so. She squealed in a bubbly manner. The woman next to her was suddenly uneasy. After Sasuke-kun saved him with an ingenious plan, Kakashi beat the man with his Sharingan thingy. Shino noticed that Fume had tilted his head up slightly when he heard that last sentence. Then Sensei passed out. A day later, he made a dog appear out of nowhere, and handed it a scroll. After that he told us that Zabuza was still alive. Kurenai turned to the woman. Did anything happen after that, and who is this woman you are escorting? The woman looked surprised for a moment before speaking. Oh, I'm Tsunami, daughter of Tazuna, the man Konoha was asked to escort. Sakura shook her head once Tsunami answered. No, nothing happened. Well, the only other thing that happened was that Kakashi started our tree walking training yesterday. Sasuke-kun was so awesome. He made it halfway up the tree on his first try. Once more all of Team 8, including the sensei, sweat dropped. Kurenai started grumbling to herself while Shino took this time to speak. I believe you were doing something before we interrupted you. If you would kindly tell us where Team 7 is located, that would be helpful. We just finished shopping a minute ago, the woman said, holding up a bag. You can walk back with us. All four nodded while Kurenai said, let on then, Tsunami-san. Hokage-sama. The old man looked up to see one of his more trusted Anbu kneeling before him. Speak, Nico. Ho. Just more than 2 days ago, we found a corpse 50 kilometers north by northeast of the village. When we took it in for testing we found that the DNA matched with one Bakanimo Mizuki, the cat-masked individual stated in a monotone. The Hokage sighed. Give me a full report now. Sir, we found the body laying by the edge of a small river take dam, just a few kilometers outside of the village that lives off of it. The body possibly washed up there due to the fact that the body wasn't nearly as decomposed as it should have been. When our team of morticians came up with the date, they estimated roughly 8 weeks, or 2 months ago plus or minus 1 month of time. From the way the body was found we think that to be on the greater time length of 3 months. How is the body's condition? How did he die? The body was too decomposed to roughly guess how he died, but the head mortician stated that there were many deep lacerations along the body's side, and the heart looked to have practically exploded causing instant, but painful death. We're unsure of how, but more than likely it was some sort of poison delivered by a blade or something. What items were on the body? The Hokage sat back preparing to listen to clothes kunai, and whatnot. Nothing. The body was naked, when we found it, sir. Looked to have been stripped of all possessions before being left. The old man didn't like the sound of that. The sacred scroll of seals. The forbidden scroll. Gone. Possibly for good. Anything else? Weird marks, odds breaking bones, anything unusual. There was a pause before Nico spoke once more. Yes, one more thing. The skin between the left shoulder and the neck looked to have been completely burned. Well, not fatal, it is an odd injury. The Hokage nodded. The story that body told. He nodded. Alright then, tell them to dig further, and document everything for later. If nothing can be found, burn the body like usual, and dump the ashes in the spot for traders. Hokage-sama. Now, Kurenai-san, please calm down, Kakashi spoke in an even, if a bit scared, tone. This much killing intent could cause our escort to have a heart attack. The rest of the room were breathing easy, and just staring at the spectacle before them. Why, whatever do you mean, Haddock-san? Kurenai asked in a sweet voice. Does anyone else feel killer intent? Everyone else shook their heads, except for Prince Brood who just grunted. I thought so, Kurenai continued to speak in a sweet tone. Now, Haddock-san. I know we don't know each other that well, me being a rookie, and you being an ex-Anbu captain, and all, but I have a very good question for you. Kakashi, who was sweating under her gaze, and with a sweet smile, asked, what would that be, Yuhi-san? Why is it that your team is only now learning tree walking? That made his 3 genin perk up a bit. Well, 2 actually. The third just went into a deeper brood. Oh well, you see, I had to get their team skills up to par. Yeah, I had to work on their teamwork skills, Kakashi said. Ah, okay. I just wanted to know. Kurenai turned her head to her team. Kakashi relaxed, thinking he was out of the frying pan, and landed right into the fire. The injured suddenly felt pain in his neck and stomach. Kurenai had him up against the wall. Now, tell me why the hell didn't you call for backup the moment you found out about who was after your escort? Even if you had cancelled the mission, Hokage-sama would have sent in a team for this, so there was no pressure for you to continue alone. Well, Kurenai didn't care for the Uchiha. The Haruno, Hana, Kurenai's friend and sister Takiba, would have been hurt to find out her brother had died on his first mission out of Konoha. She didn't like it when her friends were hurt. We had a vote on whether or not we should go. All three of my genin agree. Don't give me any of that shit, Haddock. You know full well that you could have cancelled that mission right then and there despite what your team wanted. Even if you agreed with your team, the least you could have done was call for backup right away, or ask us to send a message to the Hokage himself. At this moment, Sasuke decided to speak. Hooray, it's because I didn't want any weak-ass teams slowing us down. So I told him not to call for any weak-ass backup that old bag of bones would have sent to us. And what do you know, Haddock-san called for help anyways, and then we got you. I knew we would get a weak-ass team. Be quiet, Genin, Kurenai spoke while not looking at him. I'll let you know that I'm an Uchiha. Not some low-life Genin, Sasuke scoffed. I am an elite, not like those losers over there. Especially the Hyuga. She'll curl up and beg them not to kill her the moment things get rough. More like she'll spread her legs to get. He suddenly fell to the floor on his knees as he looked at him. But the source of the pressure was not the woman. No, it was Ishiki Fume standing behind him. Fume spoke in a low, but friendly tone. I haven't been on this team for a long time, but they're growing on me. I don't like it when someone shoots down the people I like. Besides, if you're an elite, the best of the best, then what makes me who you are kneeling before? With that, he walked back to his team, and put a supporting hand on the girl's shoulder, and smiled at her. Shino placed his hand on her other shoulder. While she couldn't see the smiles, she could definitely read it through their body language. She smiled back at both of them, and nodded her head in appreciation. Sasuke, in the meantime, tried, and failed, to stand graciously as he was still shaking from the sheer killer intent. He growled at Fume, but turned to walk over to the table to sit down. Kurenai saw all of this, and smiled inwardly. She put up her sweet facade again, and looked back to Kakashi. Haddock-san, your genin doesn't seem to know discipline. I wonder what I should put in my report. Your team training obviously hasn't worked at all. Now Kakashi knew he was walking on a fine line here. Now, Kuren, she growled. Yuhi-san. I called you here for backup because Momochi's abuser is still alive. Kurenai dropped him on his butt, and backed up a couple of inches. Yeah, well, if an A-rank borderline S-rank missing nin from Kiri that happened to be one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist were to die so quickly, he wouldn't have been alive long enough to fight you. Besides, your report to the Hokage said as much, Kurenai stated. Yeah, well, he also has a partner in the form of a hunter nin from as well. The hunter nin looked pretty skilled for their age, and was obviously not one of them. I figured I would need help if we were to be attacked again, Kakashi said as he slowly got up from the ground. When do you suspect he'll attack? Kurenai asked, still angry, but hiding most of it now. Well, when our battle was almost over, the hunter nin had struck him with 3 to the neck. I would suspect that he was put in a near-death state to fool me, Kakashi explained. Kurenai nodded as she finished for him. I see where you're going. A near-death state takes 1 week to heal. Plus battle injuries. I would say 4 or 5 days. Yes. I thought so, too. During this time, I was hoping that I would train my genin team in tree walking to help them, Kakashi said in a lazy tone. Kurenai huffed, but she had already spent her anger mostly. Fine, but know this, you better bring your team up to speed soon. You're stunting their growth if you don't teach them properly. Kakashi just sighed, ma. You have your ways of teaching them, and so do I. And yet, they didn't even know tree walking, something required of all sensei to teach in the first week, Kurenai said. She continued to rant about how Kakashi had screwed up in delaying their teaching. Shino looked over to Fume to see him signing. Must be the time of the month. Hinata just sighs, knowing it was true, while Shino signed back. It is the 9th day. Thanks for watching my video, leave a like if you enjoyed my video, and also do consider subscribing to my channel for more awesome content. And make sure to check out the author of this fanfic, link is in the description. See you next time, till then sayonara.